Hey everyone, Ryan Stills here with Team Phoenix Performance. I'm doing an intro to the video you're about to see. I'm here at Strength Union Gym in Portland, Oregon. I'm trying to find a good place to stand so that my head is not shining like a bowling ball. It's actually not that bad of a look. So I'm gonna go through in this video hook grip and my adjustment to it. And I'll explain a little bit of why and all, but I did this video about 2 months ago and wanted to wait until I had a little bit of proof in the pudding. So I hadn't done hook grip in a meet yet. So my first opportunity to do so was IPF Worlds earlier this month. So when I said so like 5 times in that last statement. I should probably work on that or get better at public speaking. I'm not gonna say so. In waiting to do so, I did get a 60-pound meet PR. I pulled 794 pounds, which is 360 kilos. My old meet PR was 733, which is some less kilos. And yeah, I wanted to make sure that I actually did this in a contest before I talked about how to improve your deadlift and how to do this hook grip. So hopefully this is helpful for you. The video on it's pretty good. The content is great. And I hope you enjoy it. Good luck. Have a good one. Hi. Today we're going to go through the adventures in hook grip. So for those of you who are not familiar with the hook grip is when you're able to hold onto the bar with double overhand, hooking your thumb between the bar and your fingers. Okay? So Olympic lifters, weightlifters, do this pretty much with all their lifts. Power lifters, we don't as much. Often we do what's called a mixed grip. So a couple things when we look at a hook grip and a mixed grip. Mixed grip, strong because you're leveraging against yourself, as opposed to just doing a double overhand with your thumbs around, okay? Hook grip eliminates that, thus allowing you to be more symmetrical when you're lifting and avoiding some of the injuries that come with a mixed grip. Injuries with a mixed grip, you'll see people will get sometimes bicep tendonitis or bicep tears because the underside here gets a slight bend in it. So with a hook grip, you don't necessarily run into that issue. One of the issues you do have with hook grip and starting out with it does hurt. And whenever I get somebody involved in it, and when I got involved in it, the pain that goes with it, often you think I'm doing it wrong. It's really not that way. Often you can be doing it right, but it's a conditioning to your hands. But there are a couple things you can do to alleviate that pain. So the first one we're gonna go with is taping your hands. And I actually cut up some tape here so I can show the actual taping of the hands and what that looks like. So I have 3 strips of tape, and based on the federation you lift for, you may want to see how many times you can actually rotate around the hands or how far down on the thumb you can go. But for me, I put them this way so I can get nothing more than 2 rotations around. So the first one is top of the thumb here. So I like to be able to wrap around the top here and get good pressure on this. I do it tight, because one of the things that this gives you, and I'll show you here with the 2, is if you look at my thumb here, this surface area from side to side is actually smaller. So it alleviates some of that so I can actually get my finger around it further than if it was flattened out this way. The next one is going to go down here. And this is going to be one of the areas that are often terrible as you come underneath, because this is where the bar is going to be laying. So if you see, I also get them right in here. They've healed up some, but from here to down in here, you can watch it. If you have a little bit of sag in there, in the bar, it will start to move a little bit, and that's where you get the tear. So my third one will go right down in that webbing to keep it down there. Now there's a couple different ways of doing this, and everyone's got their own thing based on how your hands are set up. But this I found alleviates my tear down the webbing. I can get this smaller with good pressure up here, and I don't tear underneath the first knuckle. Some people will go over the top What I found with going over the top for my own preference is when I cap off the top of my thumb and I build the pressure, there's nowhere for it to go. So I found that was way more uncomfortable for me than doing this, allowing that top to be able to push out so I have a place for it to go, but keeping the pressure on that area there so I can get my fingers fully over. So 1 second here while I get this other one taped up, which I wouldn't necessarily need because we're doing lightweight today, but I think it looks goofy only to have one finger taped. The reason I went with hook grip did not have anything to do with the symmetry or more lat engagement or my bicep issues. I went with it because I have a little bit of nerve issue in my traps. So my right hand in a mixed grip, I would find would be inconsistent at weights that were at like 90, 95%. So I could have a meet where I jump in there and I'd hit a solid number at like a 720, 730, and I'd go higher like 750, 760, and as soon as I started to break the ground, I'd come up to lock up and it would just not be able to hold. I dealt with that on and off for probably 4 years as I started to get closer and closer. My deadlift started closer and closer to 800 pounds. And now, with the hook grip, just recently, I pulled a really solid 750 and held it at the top and felt really secure about where it is. The other issue I did find with the hook grip is, in my experience, if you don't use it, you lose it. So I took a couple weeks off and did some volume work, used straps, used mix a little bit. I came back to using the hook grip and it did not feel comfortable. So I knew that it was going to take a little bit to get back into it. About 2 weeks after getting back into it again, I'm starting to feel solid again, and weights over 700 are holding tight. All right, so when getting into the bar, we're going to do this so you can see it from both sides. The first thing you want to do is make sure you get pressure down into the hand. All right, so people that say that they have smaller hands, what they're doing is they're touching the bar and trying to put their thumb and grab. And you can see, if I'm doing it from this way, I can barely get my thumb in there. I'm barely covering the top side of my thumb. If I'm able to get into it here, lock that thumb down and over, I can show you from this side here, I can get that much more in there. I found, for me, all I need is 2 fingers to lock. The other ones are support on there. All right? So 2 different ways also. Some people prefer to get it locked in here, go across the bar, and get this. So really you only have half of your thumb on there, but that's enough friction to lock it in. I find that if I get down here, I'm okay with crushing that thumb underneath both fingers. All right? Also difference is going to be what kind of bar you're using. If you're using a stiff bar, if you lift, like I lift for USAPL or IPF, we have a stiff bar. So if it's the Alico bar, competitive bar, or a Ohio bar, it's gonna be a little thicker diameter, so you're not gonna have the same, it's not gonna be the same to be able to get your fingers around as opposed to a deadlift bar. I think there's normally about a 1 to 2 millimeter difference, but when you're looking at trying to get as much of that, the fingers around the thumb as you can, it makes a big difference. So know what kind of bar you're using, because if you go from one to another, it is going to be different. The feel's going to be different. So make sure that you're using the bars you're going to compete with. So once you get the hands in, so I'm down here, I put pressure downward. I get that thumb underneath, and I 1-2. 1-2, and then my other finger's over. Now, this is where I'm going to pull from. So once I get it locked in here, I'm going to give a pull on it to see if it feels solid. Once I know, I pull a little slack out of there, I can feel if it's going to be locked in, or if one of the fingers is not all the way over there and I'm not completely sunk into it, I'll feel a little bit of motion. If I feel motion, it's not locked in. So, making sure it's locked in here, big pressure on these 2, and squeezing it. Just because you have a hook grip doesn't mean that you can relax your hands. It still comes down to the pressure that you're able to put on that thumb to keep it where it needs to be. Make sure that you've gotten all the slack out of this area, because if you have any of the webbing loose in there or it's tucked underneath, as that bar, because it's going to want to, you lock it in there so it doesn't roll, but if you have space, it'll get a little bit of motion. If that bar gets motion, it will tear the skin. So I've unfortunately realized that when coming up, which is why I have that taped down in the webbing. So one more time. Get it set up here, weight down. I'm pushing down on it to take all the slack out of there. Thumb under, 1, 2, 1, 2. Others over here, give a pull on it, it's tight. From here, the lock up. Once you start getting conditioned with it, I've heard people that can do 4 weeks conditioned and they can do within 90-95% of their max. I've seen people that 6 months in are just starting to get comfortable with being able to do their openers. So it really depends on what your comfort level is, because it's going to hurt. But I would say my biggest suggestion is work on it progressively. So in your warm-ups, build up to it until it gets to a point to where you're like, man, either the pain or it just doesn't feel right anymore. Then start to go to whatever you were doing before, if it's safe. If you're working with a lot of bicep issues, I would suggest going with straps at that point and then building in. You're gonna need a strength, but it's a different type of strength than you would have in your mixed grip. I think it's about all that I have for hook grip. There's a couple other people that have good videos out there. One of them, Mark Robb, if you ever get a chance, he's got another video on hook grip. Very smart individual. That's another one I would check out. But hey, if it's, the pain in itself is tough, but I always tell people it's not as tough as losing or giving less than 100%. So if you have any questions, you can always ask us. Have a good one.